Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well this morning. What a joy it is to be able to come before you and present a lesson. All this stuff about youth, I think I'm going to change the lesson now to, I'm now old. But the elders actually wanted me to, before we start, just give you a little update on our youth and some of the things that have happened this year. And so I'm going to do so before I start the lesson. And before I even do that, parents, thank you. Thank you for raising some wonderful kids. You make my job so much easier because you see and you realize the importance of it's your job to train them in God's Word. It's your job to admonish them in the truth, as we see in Ephesians chapter 6. And I'm just here to help. And I appreciate you letting me do so. But we have some great teens, and they are a joy to be with and a joy to be around. You know, we have right now around 35 kids in our youth group, and that's just 7th grade through 12th grade. 4 of them are actually going to be graduating this May. So Casey, Chandler, Colin, and Jackson Wade, they're all going to be graduating. So we lose 4, but we're going to gain 5 that are going to be coming into the youth group. Some of the things that have happened this summer, one of the best things is that 4 of our youth put on Christ and were baptized. So Hampton was baptized in March. Reagan was baptized at summer camp in June. And Alyssa was also baptized in June. And then Tyson Summers was baptized recently in October. What a joy it is to see not only them growing up in God's Word, but taking it as their own responsibility from that point on, saying, now God is my God, and I'm going to be His servant, and not just because He's my parents' God. And to see them grow in God's wisdom. We have gone to 9 different area-wides. One of them is actually going to be tonight as well. It's always the second Sunday of each month during the school year. Unfortunately, our winter retreat was canceled this year just because we didn't have as many, not from our congregation, but the groups that normally go with us. Many participating lads leaders went to camp, whether it's ICYC, Backwoods. Many went to other different camps as well. We've done multiple different service projects, one being like the parent night out, cutting of different lawns, helping out with the 6th grade and under and different events. We've gone rafting, Six Flags, you know those fun things. 2 lock-ins, that's why I have all the gray hair. And then we've had a bunch of families that have opened up their homes and let us come in, whether for devos or whether just to come and hang out, and I appreciate that. One thing I enjoy, we have Bible markings, and we try to do that at least once a month. And so we've done 12 this year, and includes basically different topics where the teens will write in their Bibles, verse, go to the next one, another verse that links together so that when they are asked different biblical questions, they'll be able to open up their Bibles and be able to defend it. And that's one of those things I love, and I appreciate all the teens that come to that. And then up in the rest, near the end of this month, we're going back to exposure, and that's going to be the 27th through the 30th of this month. One thing you've probably heard little rumors about this summer, I'm excited we are going to go on a mission trip. We're going to go to the Bahamas, the Grand Bahamas. Friends of Mallory and I, they are there working and kind of starting a new congregation there, and they've asked if we could come and help. And unfortunately, it's limited on how many can go. I can only take 16 total, and that includes our chaperones. And but we are going to be doing that this summer, and parents, don't worry. I will have a meeting with you pretty soon in that regard. And the teens already know I'm limited, so I'm going to have to take probably the oldest ones at this point. But I know the question you are thinking to yourselves, great, Rob, that's great. But really, what can I do to help? what can I do to help the teens? Well, you know what? I just happen to have a list right here in front of me. You guys can help by hosting a teen. You can host the teens maybe one weekend. Or you might be like, you know what? I'd love to have them over for a bonfire. Rob, do you mind if I just organize it? Yes, you can. That'd be great. Just let me know, and I'd love to do that. Actually, one thing that's going to be happening is a New Year's Eve party. The Johnsons have come to me and said, hey, we'd like to do this. Do you mind it? And I say, great. That's wonderful. We'll get back from exposure, and then the next day they'll have the New Year's party at their house. So that is wonderful. You can support the teens in the events that we do. It takes money to be able to even host or to be able to do the Bible markings for food and other things. And so I appreciate the elders having a separate account that is just for food or just for fun events that it's donated by individuals. And if you guys would like to donate to that, and many of you guys have, and I really appreciate it, you can continue to do so. You can volunteer to drive our vans. We have 35 kids in the youth group. We have 2 15-passenger vans. We always take at least 2 vans. And so if you would like to go to one of our events and be able to drive, please let me know. We'd love that. Or if you just want to come and chaperone these teens, I'll let you do a lock-in. And no, I'm just joking. But if you'd like to chaperone in any of the events that we have, please let me know. Your help is appreciated, and most importantly, what an example it is for the teens to see how much you are investing into them and to see how much you appreciate what they are to this congregation and to the Lord's church. All right, we're going to start now. You guys see in the bulletin there that the title of this lesson is I'm Not Just a Youth. Well, there's a man traveling over in Asia. He's doing work, and while he's over there, he actually takes a minute or two and does a little bit of sightseeing. As he's going through some of the backwoods, he comes to an elephant camp. No, the elephants aren't camping. It's just the elephants are there in captivity. And when he noticed, he's looking at them, and the elephants aren't in cages. The elephants aren't actually chained down. The elephants, huge elephants, multi-strength, they can do anything. They're being held by a simple rope tethered to the ground. And the man kept thinking to himself, why aren't these elephants just moving their legs, breaking the rope, and continuing? And they're free. And he watched, and none of them even attempted it. It's at that point that he finally went up to one of the trainers and he said, look, I'm in this dilemma. Why aren't these elephants just escaping? Why are they just staying there? And the trainer says, well, you see, it all starts back when the elephants are babies. We use the same rope, and we tie it around their neck. Not their necks, that wouldn't be good. They tie it around their legs. And see, at that point, the ropes are strong enough to keep the elephants from moving. And though they'll try to get out, they can't. And the trainer says it conditions these elephants as they grow. There's no point in even trying. You can't get out. And so as they grow, they're conditioned to think there's no hope of escape. And they never try when they're older. This man started thinking about it. He started thinking, these elephants, in their might and their strength, are being tethered by a simple rope because their whole life they've been told they can't escape. And I started wondering, do we ever do that to ourselves? Do we ever tether ourselves from doing what God can do through us, maybe by our society around us? Have we conditioned ourselves to now thinking, maybe our beliefs aren't exactly what they're supposed to be. Our nation says that homosexuality is now just a lifestyle. It's not a sin. Are we now just going to accept that? even though God says it's a reproach and abomination to him, 1 Timothy 1, 8 and 11? Or is marriage no longer that covenant between God, man, and woman? Matthew chapter 19. Is our morality now just the way we live every day, what we say, what we hear, what we watch, what we're going to wear? Is it all conditional on what the world says is appropriate and no longer God's? My question is, do we limit what God can do through us through our circumstances? Or maybe others' expectations? What's our limit? Do we limit what God can do through us because of what others might have said to us? Do we limit what we can do because we think, I'm just a new Christian. I don't have the knowledge of everyone else, so, I'll just watch. And I'll just watch what everyone else does and never take that initiative to work for the Lord. Maybe we're older in the faith and we're like, I've done my part and I'm going to let someone else do it now. Or maybe as we hear all the time, guys, you're the church of tomorrow. You don't have to do anything now, just wait. No. If you're a Christian, young, old, new, you're a worker of God. You're a follower of Him. And it's our responsibility to work for His kingdom. I'm not just a youth. You see, this right here, you're just a youth, is a stigma that maybe we, just like these elephants, fall into. We've heard it all our life, and therefore we don't even try to do more for the Lord. But that's not just for the teens. That's not just for the younger ones. We do that all the time in different ways. I want us, some of us, it'll take a little more thinking, but I want us to remember when we were a teen. And think of how hard that was. I want us to think about, it's a time where you're hardly old enough to really be on your own. You want to have your own sense of independence. You're trying to find some sense of who you are, your own identity. We're impetuous, yeah, at times. We dress really weird, probably more in the 70s and 80s. But our life, it's like an emotional roller coaster. And see, this is when our society tells the youth that, they're just kids. They're only young once, just let them live it up, and then they'll grow older. They'll mature. Moses in Genesis 8:21 says the imagination of a man's heart is evil from his youth. Paul admonishes Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:22 to flee youthful lusts. But you see, God, the creator of us, who knows our inner parts, He values the youth. He values them for His cause. You see, young people have that energy, that vigor that just makes you excited about doing things. They're daring. Their hearts are filled with visions of the future. And they can be a valuable component for the service of the Lord. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 12:1, remember now the Creator the Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of evil come and the years draw near, when you will say, I have no pleasure in them. 1 Timothy 4:12, one that you guys all know, teens know it. Paul says to Timothy, let no man despise your youth, but be an example. Be an example in all the things that we do in our life and the way we live. God's saying, look, don't yet let all these stigmas of what the world thinks we are, whether young, old, doesn't matter. He wants us to challenge ourselves to be more that God wants us to be. So what's hindering us from doing this? What hinders us from being what God desires us to be? What is that rope that's keeping us from the freedoms of this world, from the freedoms of the sin? What's hindering us from being that powerful light within our community? This morning we're going to look at 4 things. Just 4. 4 things that keep us from being what God wants us to be. Now there's many that we could look at. But we're going to look at different examples in God's Word, and we're going to look and see what are those things that keep us from doing what God desires us to do. So first of all, turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel chapter 17. The young people that were up in the front, they know exactly what that's at. That's what we're studying about. This is dealing with David and Goliath. And I want you to picture what's going on here. You have the army of Saul on one side of the valley of Elah. On the other side of that valley, you have the Philistines. You have this creek that's running through the middle of it. And they've been there for 40 days. Over 40 days, but Goliath has been putting these insults back and forth 40 days to the Israelites. Defiling God, defiling the men of God, and the men were afraid. And David, we don't really know exactly his age at this time. Probably in around 17 or up to even 22. But he's the youngest of 8 brothers. His 3 of his oldest brothers are there, and they are in the army of Saul. And Jesse, David's dad, says, "Hey, David, go and take some food for them. Go and take this cheese and other stuff for the captains there, and go and see how everything's going." Well, if you look at a map, David is over in Bethlehem. That's where they're at, and he's tending the sheep there. And then if you look at the valley of Elah, that's actually 20 miles from where David would be. So David gets someone to take care of the sheep, and he travels 20 miles by foot, and he goes and he delivers the stuff. And as he's coming, the noise of a battlefield. You can hear the sharpening of the different swords. You can hear the banging of the staffs or whatever onto the shields. You can hear the men talking in different groups. And then you can also hear distantly the other army that's doing the same. David comes in, and it's at that time that Goliath again puts forth that challenge to the Israelites. Chapter 17, verse 8. "And then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And you, the servant of Saul, choose a man of yourself and let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, then we'll be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the army of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." Verse 11 says the Israelites were greatly afraid. Verse 24 says they were dreadfully afraid. And this happened for 40 days over and over again. And David comes. He hears this. And he's determined. He's like, something has to be done. Why are you guys just standing here? And he stood up when others backed down. Look at verse 32. He says, your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. David trusted that God will prevail. Verse 37, 45, and 46. And because of his courage and determination, he went up and he slew the Goliath. He slew Goliath. He knew that God was the one that was giving him the strength for it. And he did it. But as you see behind me, sometimes we are limited by what others say. So we know the story of David, but do we go back and really see what he had to overcome in order to be able to do this? I want you to go back with me. Look at verse 28. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, David's oldest brother, the one that's supposed to be there encouraging, the one that's supposed to be there to help out, he says, when he heard David speak to them, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and he said, "Why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride, the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle." His oldest brother, can you sense a little bit of disgust and a little bit of resentment towards his little brother there? He's like, "What are you doing here? Your three brothers have been here all this time, and then you come up and you think, oh, well, I'm going to take care of it because my brothers are just cowards. They're not going to do anything." You can hear that resentment. And I don't think that just happened once or twice, because look at the next verse. In 29 it says, "And David said, 'What have I done now?'" It's like, what are you getting on to me about again? David says, "Is there not a cause?" This man, this Philistine, is being defiant towards our God. And you guys are just sitting there. He didn't get any encouragement from his brother. But look at verse 33. Finally, people are like, "Hey, there's a guy over here that he says he's going to do something." So they take him to King Saul. And Saul sees him in verse 33. And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth. And this man, Goliath, he's a man of war from his youth." You know, David has to have all that confidence building right there. His brother's saying, "Get away from here. You're just a scrawny little kid." The king is saying, "You can't do it. You're just too young. You don't have any experience with it." And then David has to go and basically explain, "Well, yes, I can. You know, I've killed a lion, I've killed a bear. This guy's going to be the same thing, but here's the real reason." Look at verse 37. "Moreover, David said, 'The Lord who delivered me from the paws of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hands of this Philistine.'" He had to prove to Saul, look, it's not going to be on my own strength that I'm going to kill this man. It's because God will help me through this. And he had that belief that he would. And it's because of this that Saul then says to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." So then, brother didn't think he could do it. Saul didn't think he could do it. Now he goes before Goliath. And look at verse 42 and 43. "And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good-looking. So the Philistines said to David, 'Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?' And the Philistines cursed David by his God." Do you see this trend going on? You can't do it. You're too young. You don't have enough knowledge. You're not strong enough. David didn't let what other people said to him keep him from doing what he knew needed to be done for the Lord. And because of that, he responds back to Goliath in verse 45 and 46. "Then David said to the Philistine, 'You come to me with swords, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand.'" He told everyone, God is the one that's fighting this battle. And he's using me to do it. No matter what you say, I'm going to stand up for God. And he did. took a lot of courage, determination, encouragement. He didn't get that encouragement, but he had the determination and a love for the Lord. And he changed that whole nation because of it. What's another limitation? Sometimes we're limited by what people may think of us. You know, sometimes that is a limitation for us. Well, I'm not going to stand up for God because they might think I'm a goody two-shoes. Yeah, I know, teens, we don't use that today, but everyone else understands what I'm talking about. All right. Or maybe they might think, yeah, you just think you're better than everyone else. I'm not going to stand up. I'm not going to be different. I don't want to be set apart, even though God calls us to be. Look at Daniel. Again, all these different individuals that I'm going to, we know about. We've studied. But there's some things that I think we just don't really think about in regards to them. All right, so Daniel, just going back in history and looking at it, most likely he was 11 years old to 18 years old at this time when he was taken into captivity. Verse 3, it says, and some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles were taken by Nebuchadnezzar. And this is Daniel at this time. You know, there's a bunch of individuals, a bunch of teens at this time that were taken. And many of them probably had this thought, God's left us. We're in captivity. Why do we need to hold fast to His word anymore? We're now going to be servants of the King, and maybe our life won't be that bad. It could be worse. And so they start training to be able to see if they can come before Nebuchadnezzar the king and be his servant. Verse 5, it says it was 3 years worth of training. Daniel was there, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But verse 8 is what all of us need to do no matter where we are, no matter what people might think. Daniel had it right. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. You see, the king said, hey, I want these guys fit. I want them to be in the best condition they can be. And that's going to include defiling themselves by eating things that God in Leviticus has said, you shall not eat if you are my people. And Daniel determined, I'm not going to do that. You know, they might kill me because I said no, but I'm going to stand up for the truth. And so he goes to the head eunuch and he just says, look, I can't do this. I can't defile myself because God has told me that we can't eat these things. And the man's like, look, this is my head too. If you guys don't look as good as the others, then I'm going to be blamed. Daniel had a smart mind on him. And he's like, well, let's do a trial period. Give us 10 days. Give us fruit, vegetables, and we'll just see. And then you can determine and do whatever you want. You know what Daniel's saying there? He's like, look, whether God does anything and makes us stronger or not, at the end of it, if you think I'm just worthless, I'm not going to be changing what I'm going to eat. So if you think I just need to be killed because I'm not going to defile myself, then whatever you think is best, just do. He stood up for the Lord. He stood up for His laws. And after that 10 days, well, let me back up. Do we realize that there's a bunch of other young people doing this? Look at verse 10. It says, so why should we see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? There's more than just him. There's more of these individuals. And you know what? There's probably more of these people from Israel that just have left the Lord and His laws. What are they going to think about Daniel? What are they going to think about him trying to go back to those days, to the laws of God, where they think God's just left us, He forsook us, that's why we're in captivity. It didn't matter what other people thought of him. He's going to do what's right anyways. And so he continues. So after 10 days, verse 16, the steward looked away at their before that, he looks and sees them, and he noticed that they were stronger, their reflections, their skin was healthier. They just looked better than everyone else. So the eunuch said, well, if it can do it for these guys, it can do it for everyone else. So the eunuch took away all the delicacies, all the wine, other stuff, and gave everyone fruits or vegetables and water. What do you think the other people thought of Daniel for that? First time ever having pork barbecue. First time ever having bacon. And then all of a sudden, you can't have it anymore. Come to where you're eating, you look down after you've been eating steak and everything else, and you get a carrot. You get that? Thanks a lot, Daniel. Continue on that. Yeah, can you see a little bit of resentment there? Can you see everyone looking at Daniel like, yeah, you're the guy. You're the one that did this to us. Now taking the focus off of God, now putting it onto Daniel as far as, hey, we're already in a bad spot, now you're making it even worse. Daniel still didn't let what other people thought of him affect it. He was going to put God first no matter what. And he continued to. You know, that takes a lot of integrity. Teens, make sure you have integrity. Do what's right because it's right. Do what needs to be done because you know God desires you to be that person. Congregation, same for us. Doesn't matter what the world's going to think. Doesn't matter what our coworkers might think or do. Doesn't matter what our boss might say or do. Put God first. Teach others about Him. Stand up for the truth. Because over and over and over in God's Word, we see when someone is standing up for the truth and doing what is right, God takes care of them. Every single time. I wish and I hope that we all have that zeal that Daniel did to just do what is right. His whole life was spent in captivity, basically. The time that he was thrown into the lion's den, he was probably almost 80 years old. He still was putting God first. Terry actually talked about this in class. But what about Mary, the mother of Jesus? Luke chapter 2. I'm sure she's thinking in her mind when the angel comes and says, you're going to have the Son of God, and she's not married, and she's like, yeah, what's everyone around going to be thinking about me? What are they going to think? What's Joseph going to think? What's my family going to think? What are they going to think of this child? And yet she wanted to do what the Lord desired. Luke 2:38 says, and behold, the maidservant of the Lord, she said, let it be to me according to your word. Lord, if you want me to do that, if you want me, even though people might say all these things about me, your word be done, no matter what. You know, I've given all these good examples, but here's a negative one. Mark 6:24 through 28. Herodias' daughter, Salome. She had an opportunity to get whatever she wanted in that nation. She pleased the king. She went back and she wanted to please her mom before anything else. And mom said, give me John the Baptist's head. Without even hesitating, without even thinking, this is a man's life that we are taking. She went back because she wanted to please her mother more than doing what was right. And John the Baptist was beheaded. Guys, we can't let the thoughts and what others around us say and think determine what God desires us to do and what the Word of God has commanded us to be. The integrity of being a Christian, no matter what. So are we limiting ourselves by what we say? Are we limiting ourselves by what we think? Well, maybe it's not those, but maybe This is more you. I'm living by what others expect from me. You're just teens, don't worry about it. Okay. They expect me to be teen, so I'll just be a teen. I'll live it up right now. Maybe it's one of those where I just have to keep the status quo. You know, this is just how I was raised. This is what my family has always believed. So I see what the Word of God says, but I'm just going to do whatever I've always done. Well, my parents never came to Bible class. Why should I? Do we stay the way we are and not let God do the amazing things He can through us because that's just what is expected of us? That's just what everyone just thinks we should be. I want you to go to 2 Chronicles. Josiah is an amazing man. Josiah became king when he was only 8 years old. I'm going to read just a section. 2 Chronicles chapter 34. He's 8 when he becomes king. And it said in verse 2, "And he did what was right in the sight of the Lord. He did not turn aside to the right hand or to the left." He saw that narrow path. He saw where he needed to be, and he followed it. But let's follow his life and see. Verse 3, "In his 8th year of reign," so he's 16 now, "he began to seek the God of his father." Okay, look, let's go on, keep going. It says in the 12th year of his reign, that means he's now 20. "He began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the wooden images, the carved images, the molded images. He broke down the altars." Verse 4, he got rid of the incense. He cut down the wooden images, carved image, molded images. Verse 5, "And he cleansed Judah and Jerusalem." He's only 20, guys. And he's clearing out the idolatry, the things that defiled this nation for years. Look at verse 8. "Then in his 18th year," which he's now 26, "he went and had the temple cleaned out." For years and years, the temple was not used as it should have been. And he had it cleared out. I can almost see, just like Christ when he threw over the money changers and got them out of there, Josiah's doing the same thing. He said, you get rid of all those things that are not there, that God has not ordained to be there. And they cleaned it out. And as they did that, they found the law of Moses, a copy of it that each king is supposed to read and know, but it's been lost or no one's seen it for years. And he has it brought out, and they read it before him. And he tears his clothes in grief, knowing how far Judah has gone from the truth. And he weeps and mourns and prays to God for forgiveness. Continue on. Verse 27, God answers him, and he says, "Because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before God when you heard his words against this place and against its inhabitants, and you humbled yourself before me, and you tore your clothes and wept before me, I also have heard you, says the Lord." And he says, "You will be gathered together in your grave in peace." I'm not going to have all these things that I've promised come to this nation until you've already passed on. He also set up the Passover like it's never been done before, all the way back to the Judges. All the way back, before even David, they followed. Verse 18 in chapter 35 says, "Then there had been no Passover kept in Israel like this since the days of Samuel the prophet, and none of the kings of Israel had kept such a Passover as Josiah kept." Do you think the Israelites, do you think the men of Judah, that's what they're expecting from this young 8-year-old king? To just totally have a spiritual upheaval in that nation? To totally turn from all the things that they've been doing for years? Because you know it was not because his dad taught him. His dad was Ammon. And Ammon, it says, 2 Chronicles 33:22, did evil in the sight of the Lord. Well, it definitely wasn't his grandfather. His grandfather was Manasseh. 2 Chronicles 33:2, Manasseh did evil in the sight of the Lord according to the abominations of the nations, whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. He wasn't taught to do what was right. He wasn't taught to abide by God's word from his parents. The Israelites are just like, hey, this is how it's always been. Let's just keep going. Josiah didn't have the expectations of doing what was right because of his parents or grandparents. It's because as we go back to chapter 34, in verse 3, he decided to follow the Lord. You know, we can't let what other people expect from us, whether it's because of our different upbringing, whether it's because of where we came from, we can't let that change what God can do through us. It can't be an excuse, guys. Because we can't say, well, my parents, they're just not as strong religiously. Or maybe we've kind of never done that. You know, if you're a Christian, guess what? You have just owned that. You now take responsibility of your spiritual learning and your spiritual journey in regards to following God as He has proclaimed it. You know, sometimes we might ask ourselves, why should we change? It's comfortable. Why should we do something different just because, you know, it's going to be a lot harder? It's never raised that way. If I do, then people who knows all the sins I've committed, all the things, they're going to be like, look at that person. They're just putting it on right there. They're not really who God wants them to be. They're just trying to act like it. You know, sometimes we might think that. People are falling into that expectation. Josiah followed the Lord because it was right. He followed what the Creator wanted him to do, and he did it. You know, God can do amazing things through us just like He did through Josiah. Jeremiah. Chandler, I appreciate you reading that verse. Jeremiah chapter 1. You know, sometimes our expectations for ourselves doesn't match what God knows He can do through us. Jeremiah was this example. God came to Jeremiah basically in the 13th year of the reign of Josiah. 2 young people. Accordingly, just by looking at the history here, it looks like Jeremiah preached for some 60 years. If he preached for some 16 years, then this means that God probably called him to be His prophet when he was in his late teens. And Jeremiah, like I know I have before. And I'm assuming some of you have done the same thing. When God says, hey, I need you to be my prophet. I need you to tell others of God. I need you to make sure that you're teaching the truth and all the truth. Jeremiah says, I can't. I'm too young. I can't do it. Verse 7. I can see God almost like a parent. Don't tell me you're too young. He said, I know you. I know what you can do. Don't tell me you're just a youth. He said, you shall go. He's not saying, yeah, you can do it if you want. He's like, no, you're going to go. All right? It's almost like me telling Grant, clean your room. No. Now clean your room. You're going to clean your room. Go do it now, kind of thing. God is telling Jeremiah, He's like, you are going to teach my word. You're going to talk to the Israelites. You're going to tell them of all the things that they're doing wrong. He's not known as the weeping prophet for nothing. People didn't want to hear what he had to say. And yet he did what God said. Verse 7, for you shall go to all whom I send, and whatever I command you, you shall speak. Then he comforts him here. He says, don't be afraid of their faces, for I'm with you to deliver you. You know, Jeremiah probably said, I'm just a teen, and you want me to go to all these people and tell them they're doing wrong? All these priests, all those that have been supposedly following you and serving you for all these years, and you want me to come before them and say you're wrong? God's told me that you need to repent. We need to come back to the Lord. And he's afraid. He's afraid of what people might think of him, the expectations they have for him. But guess what? He let God be the one to tell him what he couldn't do. He became one of the great prophets. You know, maybe we're limited by what we say, by what we think, or from expectations of others. But this last one, our fourth one, maybe we're not limited by those three, but maybe we limit ourselves by our own circumstances. We're just not very educated in God's Word. We can't do it. My upbringing it's not going to allow me to do certain things. You know, I've failed so many times. Why should I even try again? Do we limit ourselves by what we consider negative circumstances in our life? I love this story. We know of Naaman. We know of all the things that happened to him. But I'm not going to be talking about Naaman. You see, I'm going to be talking about his wife's servant girl. Chapter 5 in 2 Kings. It says that, verse 2, and the Syrians had gone out on raids and had brought back captive a young girl from the land of Israel. And she waited on Naaman's wife. Here's her circumstance. Her parents probably got killed by these Syrians. She's now by herself alone. She's afraid. She probably has no hope of ever being free again. That's her circumstance. But she didn't let it rule her. Naaman had leprosy. And I want you to understand what this young girl did. Look at verse 3. And she said to her mistress, if only my master with the prophets who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy. This young girl had compassion for the sickness that her master was under. No longer is it, oh me, oh my, look at the things that God has given me in my life. You know, God doesn't give us the negative things in our life. You know, we live in a world where there's sin. And sometimes because of other sins, we have to deal with those consequences. But she realized he was in torment because of the leprosy. And she had faith that the prophets of God could do something about it. Do we have compassion for those that might do bad to us, that might say things negative to us? Do we have compassion for their souls like this young girl did for her master? She said, and for he would heal him. Who's this? Well, this is referring to a prophet in Israel. So she had confidence that God would be able to heal Naaman. Most of you know, listen, Luke chapter 4, verse 27, it says, during the time in Israel, during this time that she's talking, no leper has ever been healed of leprosy. None. So why did she have confidence that he could be healed? Because she had confidence in God. She didn't limit what God can do. And because of that, because of her confidence, it says in the end of verse 4, Naaman went in and told his master, saying, thus and thus said the girl, She was pretty convincing. To make him a commander of the army of Syria, to go down into Israel and to basically petition and beg them to heal him. God used this young girl to change Naaman's whole mind. Look at verse 15 in chapter 5. And he returned to the man of God, and this is after he's been healed. He and all his aides and came and stood before him, and he said, "Indeed, now I know." It's no longer my servant girls that's telling me about this. "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." Verse 17, so Naaman said, "Then if not, please, that your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth. For your servant will no longer offer either burnt offerings or sacrifices to other gods but the Lord." This little servant girl, because of her compassion, because of her love, because she didn't let the circumstance that she was in hinder her from telling her master about God and what he can do for him. And because of that, Naaman not only was healed, but also believed in the one true God. Too many times we limit ourselves on what God can do through us because maybe we're limited by what we think others might say to us, what they might think about us, what they expect from us, or maybe just because we think we're in a circumstance that, that's just how it is. The examples that I've given you shows what we can do if we don't limit ourselves in those areas. The title, "I'm Not Just a Youth." The reason I have that is because every example that I've given to you were the youths. They all did amazing things for God because they let God do it through them. They didn't limit what they could do by what others might have said or thought or any of their expectations. All of us, whether we're young, whether we're a teen, whether we're old, doesn't matter. All of us need to be what God desires us to be, no matter what situation or circumstance we're in. And you might be thinking, well, what is that? Well, we've already kind of looked at it. 1 Timothy 4:12, that no one despise your youth, but be an example to the believers in word, in what you say, how you say it, in conduct, the way you live your life, the things that you do each day, your everyday living. Be that example. In love, do you have love and compassion for those that are lost? So much that, you're going to go out of your way to be able to teach them and tell them the true love that God has for them and what God can do to be able to save them, save their souls. In spirit, putting God's word first before your own desires. And in purity, keeping our hearts and minds from the impurities of the world. That's how we can do it. That's what Paul's telling Timothy. Be that example. Doesn't matter that you're young. Doesn't matter that you're old. The young people are looking at the older to see their examples and to follow and imitate. Young people, those younger than you, are looking to you and saying, that's what I want to be when I'm a teen. Be the example that God can use you to be if you put Him first. There might be something that's limiting you from being a Christian, from being the man or the woman that God desires you to be. Do we let others limit it by what they say and think, the expectations they might have for you, or by our present or past circumstances? God can do amazing things through us if we'll only let Him. Don't limit ourselves, just like the elephants, by past failures. We can break through from that. Maybe you've let others come in the way of true obedience to God's word. Maybe you have let the world hold you back from being who God desires you to be. Maybe you haven't put on Christ in baptism. You haven't put God first like He desires you to. You haven't repented of your sins, confessing Christ as the Son of God and living faithfully. Or maybe you are a New Testament Christian, but have stopped following all of God's word. You can make it right. You can do it right now. If you don't mind coming as we together stand and as we sing.